1 in 8 millennials experienced this challenge in 2022, but before we jump into that, make sure you hit the subscribe button below to stay on top of all of the latest Huntsville, Alabama real estate news. For the first time in 8 years, the millennial age group is not the top age group purchasing homes. In 2022, that percentage shrunk from 43% all the way down to 28%, which leads us to 1 in 8 millennials unfortunately had to move home in 2022. All right, so you might be asking, how did we get to this point for millennials? Well, it really all started, the genesis of it started back in 2008 when we had the housing crash. The housing crash created fewer supply of homes over the next 12 years as builders went out of business, banks stopped lending money on new developments. And so a result of that is we had new family formations and not enough housing in this country. So during that 12-year period, we had a 6.5 million home deficit created in this country. So simply not enough supply of housing. So you fast forward to the COVID event in 2020, and what did that produce? Well, that produced a lot of fear and uncertainty. And so the Fed decided to lower interest rates, increase the demand for housing, and with that we increased the demand, but we didn't have enough supply, and so prices continue to go up during this time frame. And on top of that, the government decided that they were going to try to print their way out of this challenge. And what happened was we had 40% of the US dollars printed during these 24 months, and so we have inflation. So inflation, rising housing prices, and lack of supply. Fast forward to late 2022, now the Fed is raising interest rates. We have higher interest rates, we have higher prices. Now that's resulted into the housing affordability index here in Huntsville and across the nation going below 100, meaning the average income can't afford the average home. And so that's where we sit for millennials. Even millennials that have good paying jobs, a lot of them are not able to afford the average price range home in this country. And so that's how we got to the situation where 1 in 8 millennials have moved back home in 2022. As a result of all these millennials moving back home, homeownership rates are actually at the lowest they've been in over 50 years in this country, all the way down to 62.9%. And the thing is, people that are not buying home, renters that are sitting on the sidelines, it's not that they don't want to purchase a home. There's a recent survey done by 1000 Watt, and it showed that 95.5% of renters actually want to purchase a home. And so that's the situation that we're in right now. Millennials are moving back home, but that's not what they want to do. They want to get into home ownership and purchase their first home. So if this is you and you're renting a home right now, you're a millennial wanting to buy your first home, build wealth through real estate, because as you know by watching these previous videos, homeowners have 40 times the net worth of homeowners, on average $255,000. So if that's you, here's my advice for you. Number one is, it's not your forever home. Stop watching HGTV. You don't have to have that dream kitchen. You don't have to be in the center of town. Look at low down payment loans such as FHA, or even look at rural development loans such as USDA. USDA loans are 100% financing. There's 0 down payment. And then also, one of the things with that is you might have to buy a little bit further out and a little bit longer commute into work or into the gym and those type of things. But you've got to live like no one else so you can live like no one else. And so, these are great loans because it's no down payment. And then also there's less competition typically in these rural areas. And so the game of real estate is not buying your forever home your first time. Get into the home, start to build equity, and then you trade up. You build that equity, use that equity as a down payment to trade up and move up in a home. And as interest rates come down, that creates lower and more affordable payments as well. Another great option for first-time home buyers and millennials that we've been talking about on these videos is house hacking. So one way to house hack is to buy a duplex, buy a fourplex. Unfortunately, here in Huntsville, there's not a lot of those here in our area. So another way that you can do that is to buy a 3-bedroom home, 4-bedroom home, and rent out 1, 2, or even 3 of those bedrooms. Take that cash flow to pay for your mortgage. That allows you to kind of live like no one else so you can live like nowhere else, save up that money, and then that allows you to live the lifestyle that you want to live in the area that you want to live into, or start to build equity and maybe even purchase another investment property as a result of it. So house hacking is a great option for first-time home buyers and millennials right now. Another couple of things that I would recommend to millennials and first-time home buyers as you're starting to negotiate with sellers. Number one is, you may not be in the most financially best positioned. You may not be paying cash. You may not be able to pay above appraised value and some of these different things. So find out what is important to the seller. Find out other things that may be important that you could negotiate with the seller on their benefit so that you get the home and maybe win out against another offer. So some of these things might be, when does the seller need to move? Do they need to, are they, typically if you're a seller, you still got somewhere to buy and move into? Do they need flexibility on the move out date? That could be a big thing. Do they need flexibility? Are they building a new home? Do they need a longer closing date? So find out what's important to the seller, and you can do that by working with a great real estate agent. The real estate agent can work with the other agent and find out what's important to the seller. So that's number one. And then number two is if it is a home where there's some flexibility, where the seller may be more motivated, one thing that can really benefit you from a cash flow perspective is asking for the seller to pay a 2-1 rate buy down. 2-1 rate buy down is where the interest rate is bought down 2% the first year and 1% the second year. So if rates were say 6.5% today, that would mean that 2% buy down would be 4.5% your first year, and then 1% down the second year, so 5.5%. Then you get to year 3, and it's very likely a lot of people are predicting that interest rates are going to be lower, and so that's where you would potentially refinance a home. But either way, you save a lot of money during those first couple of years. So 2-1 rate buy down, if the seller's negotiable, is a great way to help you afford your first home. The other thing that I'm recommending as well, not necessarily for millennials, but to the parents of millennials. So you boomers out there that have benefited from higher stock market values, real estate values going up. It's said that there's going to be a huge wealth transfer from boomers to millennials at some point in the future. And so my recommendation to boomers, if this is you, go ahead and look at creating some gifting for your first-time home buyer millennial now, so they can go ahead and get in the game of real estate, start building wealth. And if your kids are living at your home and you want some of that extra privacy and you want your freedom back, that's a great option to these boomers as well, to give them equity so that they can go out and start building their life. So if you're a millennial looking to buy your first home, if you're a boomer that's looking to either sell or help create some equity transfer to your millennial children so that they can start building equity in their first home, shoot us an email at moving@mattcurtisrealestate.com. We look forward to helping you either buy your first home or sell a home as well.